Want to speed up your language learning? Get access to all of our best PDF cheat sheets for free. Just click the link in the description and sign up for your free lifetime account right now. American accents. These are different American accents that you will hear in TV, in movies, and if you visit the USA, perhaps in different regions as well. So we're going to share and try our best to share what these accents might sound like, but forgive us in advance if it's not perfect. Anyway, let's begin. You want to start us off?
All right, sure.
Okay.
Well, I guess I'll go in alphabetical order. And my first one is Boston. A nice Boston accent is a sort of classic, strong American accent. Mm-hmm. And they're really famous. The famous thing that the Boston accent does is it drops the rhotic R that follows a vowel. So the classic example is if you have a car, you park your car in Harvard Yard, but you don't say it that way. So you park your car in Harvard Yard. That's the classic Boston example. And that's probably all I can do of that accent.
Oh, I've got another one that my mom used to use for the Boston accent that has the same thing.
Let's hear it.
Which was, let's go up to 33rd and 3rd Street and listen to the Boyd's chirp.
Sure.
It's like that R sound. Uh-huh. It's totally different from the way that we're speaking now.
Yes.
So, but it's hard, I think, if you're not expecting that.
No, it's a really distinct accent.
The first time you hear that, it's shocking, actually.
It's interesting because I think a lot of accents in the U.S. and a lot of places are often regional, right? They're for a whole region, and sometimes they're very specific to a city. And I think Boston is that case. Mm-hmm. It's very specific to a very kind of small location. Mm-hmm. It's this city in the Northeast.
Yeah. I think you do see that in movies actually a lot.
Definitely. Yes.
For sure.
It's interesting to me the way that different accents are associated with different like stereotypes of people in movies and things like that. So in movies or on television, oftentimes that Boston accent is associated with a kind of like tough, no-nonsense attitude. Yeah. And I'm sure there are tough, no-nonsense people in Boston, but I'm sure there are people that are not so tough and tolerate a lot of nonsense.
That is probably true. True anywhere.
What do you have for us, Alicia?
All right, I'm gonna choose. I'm gonna start where I was born and a place that I love to make fun of all the time. The Californian accent. I say the Californian accent, but there's not just one. So maybe my favorite accent to make fun of is what's called the Valley Girl accent. The Valley Girl accent is known for making all statements sound like a question and having a very whiny manner of speech. There's also this sort of weird thing that seems to be not specific, but very common in speech among young women, particularly from California. And that's something called vocal fry, where women will like drop the pitch of their voice in order to, just to kind of create a different manner of speech. There are a variety of reasons why people do that. And I didn't actually know, but I do it. I just grew up talking that way, though. It never occurred to me I should use this kind of speech in a certain situation. Right. I just grew up speaking that way. But in recent years, vocal fry has been the subject of discussion in some things I've read. But anyway, so a typical California Valley girl, if I can give an example, is
Please.
Today I was going to work and I saw this guy and he was really, really scary, and I didn't know what to do.
Oh, no. So what did you do?
So they have this very whiny way of sharing stories and explaining things. Actually, in that series of example questions, in that series of statements, nothing I said was a question, but everything had that upward intonation. So those are a few things that are kind of characteristic, sort of characteristics among women this way. But men, on the other hand, there's this image of the surfer dude from California. And it's typically young men who speak this way. And they'll be like, yeah, bro, what's up? Let's head to the beach sort of thing. This very, how would you describe that? It's like if you could imagine your voice being relaxed and yet rough at the same time.
Sure.
That's kind of what it sounds like. Do you ever like to make fun of Californians and the way they speak? It's my favorite accent to make fun of.
Well, I don't like to make fun of accents as a rule, Alicia.
No?
No, I do.
Well, I should say to mimic.
To mimic.
It's fun. It's my favorite accent to mimic,
It is a fun accent to mimic. And maybe this, I think this accent as well has certain associations with it. Maybe a lot of people might associate stupidity or dumbness with a Californian accent, which is unfortunate because that's not always the case. There are dumb people from everywhere, not only California. But this is an accent that we often associate that with, which is unfortunate.
Right, that's true. Because of the manner of delivery, and also, apparently, right now, this is vocal fry. I'm not even thinking about it, but dropping your voice into a lower register. But apparently, people associate that with stupidity. The people are, specifically young women, are trying to alter their voice to seem more intelligent or something like that.
Right.
But I don't even think about it, honestly. So it is quite interesting. But California has a range of accents, a range of different ways of talking. So that's just one.
There you go.
Anyway, back to your side of the table.
Absolutely. We're still in alphabetical order, which I like. And I am going to do a Chicago accent now for you. Chicago accent, very kind of stereotypical Midwestern accent. I think there is a wider kind of Midwestern accent. And the Chicago accent is maybe a subset of that. It's not just like the wider Midwestern accent, but there's a Chicago accent too. I don't know this accent super well, but I chose this one because it's an accent that I used to see in one of my favorite Saturday Night Live sketches when I was a kid, which were the Bears fans. The Bears. They're from Chicago, and they love the Chicago Bears. And that's the accent. So it kind of just draws out, what does it do? Chicago. It draws out a lot of vowel sounds. A lot of Midwestern accent draws out vowel sounds and makes them a little higher on your palate, I guess.
Bears.
The Bears.
Yeah, instead of bears.
So it's a little more like open and back and up with the vowels.
I could not do a Chicago accent to save my life.
Try it. Chicago.
There
you go. You're doing
It's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, it's a nice accent. I like it. The Chicago accent has associations with like a kind of working class accent. But maybe that's just me.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. Yeah, that's a good one. But I don't think I could do.
It's a tough one. I don't want to try saying much more than Chicago and the Bears.
Yeah.
Because that's just sort of what I've heard before.
Right. It's tough. It's tough. Okay.
It's a good one.
Okay, I'll go north of that then. So the next one that I prepared is, I called it Minnesota. So Minnesota is a state that is north-ish of Chicago. Chicago is in Illinois, the state of Illinois. So this is sort of the same region, but this is further north. So you're heading towards Canada. So there are a couple of places, like we talked about, Wisconsin is another state that might have a similar accent here. But Minnesota, similar to Chicago, has these very drawn out vowel sounds. And it's... Okay, I guess I'll just try and...
Let's hear it.
The one thing that we all know how to say is like, oh yeah, sure, you betcha.
Oh, sure, you betcha.
Oh, sure. Oh, sure.
Oh, Alicia.
Oh.
That was a little Irish.
Oh, Minnesotan accents, it sounds very cheery,
yes, I think so too.
And that's kind of what throws people off.
It's very friendly.
I shouldn't say throws people off, but it's like, it sounds kind of joyful just on its own. Like, so anything you say in like a Minnesotan accent, it sounds just more happy.
It sounds very sincere to me.
Yeah.
Like if I hear a Minnesota mom saying, "Oh, sure, you betcha. Have some hot dish."
I don't know what hot dish is.
It's casserole, but they say hot dish.
Hot dish. Okay.
Yeah, it's very sincere and warm and friendly, I think.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah, very rounded vowels.
Right.
Accent.
I'm not sure exactly how far this accent goes in the region.
Sure.
If it extends into Canada, for example. Like Canada, when we talk about a Canadian accent, we use words like ending sentences with eh. That kind of thing, like, oh yeah, Canada, eh? That sort of thing.
But a lot of Canadian accents differ from American accents too in the vowels, like rounder, longer vowels. compared to sort of a general American accent. And I think Minnesotan accent or upper Midwest accents are towards that end of the spectrum as well. So I think Minnesotan accents are similar to maybe a central Canadian accent. I think the most famous example of a Minnesotan accent is from the movie Fargo, the Coen Brothers movie, which is Fargo is not in Minnesota. It's in one of the Dakotas, right? North or South Dakota? North Dakota. Fargo's in South Dakota? One of the Dakotas.
Okay.
But that accent is a very classic kind of Minnesotan accent that the characters use.
Right. And I was thinking about that too in choosing that accent to describe because, and this is part of the reason why I said it sounds kind of cheerful, is that movie it's a suspense movie. It's a murder mystery.
Yes.
But everyone is speaking in this kind of cheerful sounding voice. And that really that kind of gives this really kind of strange, mysterious feel to the film.
Yes, there's a good contrast there. I think you're right. I never thought about that, but I agree with you.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, that's a bit about Minnesota. I don't know if it was good or not. But anyway, let's go on to your next one. What do you think?
My last one is Southern accent. And now Southern accents also, there is a lot of variety in Southern accents. Different states in the South, different parts of those states have different Southern accents, but there's also a sort of general Southern accent. I'm from the South. I grew up in the South, but I do not have a Southern accent. But I like to try and pick out, when I hear a Southern accent, I like to try and guess where people are from hearing their accent. But I'm not always right. So there's sort of a general Southern accent, and there are pockets of specific kind of accents in the South. And I also think there's a big distinction in Southern accents between like a rural Southern accent and a more urban or city Southern accent. The city accents are a little bit more they're softer, a little more genteel. And the rural accents are twangier, I would say. So, for example, a gentle Southern accent would be something like, "Hey, y'all, bless your heart," something like that. Whereas a twangy accent would be, "Hey, y'all, bless your heart."
Much sharper.
Sharper, a little more throaty, maybe.
Okay.
But there's a drawl and an elongation and a slowness to a Southern accent that I think is very nice.
Right. And I think going back to what you mentioned about the Boston accent and the way the R sounds in particular change, I think that you can hear that with kind of like you described, the more city version of a Southern accent. Like I think back to like when my grandmother would use the expression, she would say, "Oh Lordy."
Oh Lordy.
Instead of saying, "Oh my God," like that was the Southern way of saying Lordy.
Right.
Or that was a way of saying, "Oh my God." But she would say, as you just said, "Oh Lordy." Like the R sound. When we spell that word on paper, it's Lordy. But when she pronounced it, it was like LAWDY, Lordy. That was the way she made an O and an R sound too. So it was this very soft, slow
it's
way
a
of
slow
speaking.
accent. A lot of the sounds kind of blend together. I think it's a nice accent most of the time. But unfortunately, a Southern accent also has associations that are generally kind of negative in other parts of the country. A lot of people hear a Southern accent and think that a person with a Southern accent is maybe uneducated, not very smart. And again, I think that's very unfortunate because that's not always the case. I think that is an unfair stereotype associated with the accent.
For sure. Okay, then I'll go for my last one a bit to the west of you, I suppose, though this could probably be blending a little bit with Southern accents, I feel. I chose Texas for the next accent. So Texas borders Mexico. And I was thinking about this actually in preparing this card, and I was kind of thinking it's interesting that you don't hear more of an influence, at least among like white English speakers in Texas and in that region. Like there's not more of an influence in terms of like the way Spanish speakers talk. But instead, the Texas accent, the traditional, I guess, stereotypical Texas accent sounds much more similar to a Southern accent, I think.
I agree.
They have what's called the Texas drawl. So a drawl is like this continuous style of speaking. It's like this really, well, it's not always slow, but it's like there are no breaks almost between words sometimes, or they're like kind of rolling the words together. So we make like clear distinctions, admittedly a little bit exaggerated for this show, but making clear distinctions between words. But in Texas accents, you might not hear such a clear distinction. So some kind of maybe famous things that people say in Texan accents, like even the way the state is pronounced, we say Texas, but Texans might say Texas, Texas.
Oh, yeah?
I don't know.
Sure, why not? Texas.
Texas.
Don't mess with Texas.
Right? That's better.
Sure.
I can't do it very well. Texas. Yeah. It's like, it's
there's a cadence to it, which is nice.
I'm struggling to make that sound. It's
Texas.
Without embarrassing myself, but like, it's like the image that kind of speech conjures, like I think you imagine like a cowboy. Like when you hear somebody who speaks this way, it's like a big guy too.
Right.
Like a slow kind of, maybe actually kind of gentle. I have an image of like a slow sort of gentle cowboy. It sounds really weird, but it's just a stereotypical image, I think, of someone who speaks with this typical Texan accent.
Yes, yeah. Sorry to interrupt.
No.
I think that the stereotypical Southern accent, I think that the stereotypical Texan accent also, it inserts a lot of these like glide sounds. There's a lot of neat, like Y and gliding and blended vowels in there. So, when you say like, don't mess with Texas, don't mess with Texas, you know, you're putting in a little Y to kind of wedge that vowel apart.
Right.
Get.
Instead of get.
Get.
Get. Yeah. That's a good one then. That sort of Y sound gets in there. Get up. Y'all.
Yeah.
Y'all
there are a lot.
Too,
there's some influence with a Southern accent in Texas as well. It's a different accent, but the two are often mistaken. They're similar.
Yeah. And these are just a few accents, really. There are so many and like some small regional variations as well.
Absolutely.
So these are just a couple examples of maybe the ones that stood out. But it's quite, I feel anyway, it's quite difficult to really replicate another accent if you're not used to using it that much.
It's true. It's hard. And I don't know about you, but I've been very self-conscious.
Me too.
Doing all of these.
Me too.
Hopefully they're accurate. I think we're going to just get completely roasted in the comments.
Could be.
How terrible our accents
Could be. But if you want to know more about these accents, I would recommend just do a quick YouTube search to see what people actually sound like using these accents. Because, you know, maybe we can do a Boston accent or like a Californian accent, okay. But if you really want to see a good example of someone speaking that way, just do a quick YouTube search and maybe you can find some better resources, some actual native speaker resources. We often get asked on this channel, what kind of English are we speaking? People usually ask, is this American English? Is this British English? And the answer is American English. We speak American English on this channel. Both of us are American English speakers, but we have different accents, actually. We sound fairly similar in most ways. But I am from the West Coast. I was born in California, and then I was raised in Oregon. So I have a very West Coast, I suppose, accent. But I think that has also been influenced here and there by the people and the accents that I've spent my time around. So it's mostly West Coast, I would say. There's not really one specific region for me.
Right.
But how would you define your accent?
I would say I have a fairly standard American accent. And so I grew up in the South, as I said, but I don't have a Southern accent. When I go home, my family's still all in the South. I'm not in the South now, but when I go home, some of my Southern accent creeps out. And I kind of let it creep out a little bit, honestly, because it helps show people that I'm from there. I mean, accents in a way are like a membership card to a community. And so I let my Southern accent come out a little bit when I'm home, but otherwise, this is my normal accent, sort of standard American accent. And a standard American accent is sort of like the newscaster accent. It's the flat, overarching accent that you could find in any part of the country. So people from Boston might not have a strong Boston accent. People from California might not have a strong Californian accent. They might have more of a standard American accent that people might pick up from just watching TV growing up, which is maybe what happened with me. But I also know that I have one interesting thing about accents. We've been talking a lot about pronunciation, but word choice is also a big part of accents. the different words people use for different things. Like, for example, in Minnesota, it's hot dish, but other parts of the country, it's casserole and things like that. And some of the words that I use, that I have in my lexicon, in my vocabulary, my internal vocabulary, are very New England because my parents are from the East Coast. And so I pronounce your mother, or excuse me, your mother or father's sister is your
aunt.
I say aunt.
How do you say the word F-O-R?
For.
Fur.
Really?
Yeah. Like, I'm going to go to the store for some milk. We say fur.
I might say fur if I'm saying it quickly, but I'm more likely to say for, I would say. I'm going to the store for some milk.
I definitely say fur.
Interesting. So.
How do you pronounce K-N-E-W?
K-N-E-W? New.
Yeah, I think I say new as well. But I've heard some people kind of, they recognize the K sound and make it more of like a new sort of sound.
Okay.
I just say new.
New.
Like N-U.
I knew
That's
it.
how I pronounce it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like dialects for sure.
Yeah, dialects, yeah.
They are a huge part of language as well, not just accent. There is one fierce debate that has raged for a long time. Fierce debate means a strong, heated discussion that has raged for a long time, meaning it has continued for a long time. Soda, pop, Coke, cola. Those 4 words are used in different regions of the USA. Pop?
You left off pop, or did you say pop?
I thought I said pop.
Did you say pop?
I don't know.
Okay, sorry.
I said pop!
I ruined it.
Yeah!
I ruined it.
Okay,
Take it back.
Okay, so soda, pop, Coke, cola. Those 4 words all mean fizzy, carbonated drink. When I grew up in California and in Oregon, we used pop.
Okay.
We used pop. Absolutely not Coke, because in my mind, Coke is a brand and that is specific to one item only. What did you use?
Coke.
Coke!
Because I'm from the South.
No.
In the South, people say Coke because Coke is a Southern brand. It's from Atlanta. But when I moved out of the South and I moved to the West Coast when I was 18, I taught myself to say soda. I started saying soda.
Wait, you started saying soda when you moved to the West Coast?
Yes. Growing up in the South, I would go to a restaurant when I was a kid, with my parents, and what do you want, hon? I'll have a Coke, please. What kind? Sprite. Whatever, all of those things are Coke. Any soda was Coke. I think that's changing now, maybe. Maybe more people are saying soda in the South. But I definitely said Coke growing up. And I changed to Coke.
I think I said pop a lot.
Sure. Fun vocab for you for the day. If you look at a map, say you have a map of the United States, and down here you've got Coke, and over here you've got soda, and over here you've got pop. The border between those zones is an isogloss.
What?
Isogloss.
Isogloss.
Yes, an isogloss is the term used to demarcate between regions based on dialect.
Interesting.
And that's your word of the day.
Though I'm interested. It's literally something you could draw a line down.
It's not. There's a lot of crossover. And so you can see isogloss maps. If you just get on Google and you Google, United States isogloss maps, you'll see different maps for different terms and different words. And sometimes you'll see quizzes, like these Facebook quizzes kind of things where, how do you pronounce this word? What do you call this insect? And so on. And based on how you answer, those quizzes are pretty accurate at predicting where you're from. Isogloss is the word ISOGLOSS. So if you Google isogloss, United States or American isogloss map, something like that, you can find some very interesting images that show you how different words are pronounced or different words that are used for the same thing in different parts of the country. And the lines are not sharp. There's a lot of blending and gray area where those lines meet.
Interesting. So maybe if you find an accent that you like, and you want to know more about that, you can use one of those.
Study
an isogloss
some isogloss maps.
You never know. It sounds interesting. Cool. Thanks for telling. I didn't know about that. That's
Sure.
the first time I'd ever heard of an isogloss map. I
There you
learned
go.
something very cool. All right. Well, I guess we'll wrap it up there. So those are a few accents from the USA. Again, these are not by any means the only accents in the USA. Definitely have a look at some other videos online if you want to know more about these accents, and definitely check out isogloss maps, as Davey recommended, to learn a little bit more about each region where different accents are spoken. And phrases for gossip. Let's go. Oh my God. So the first phrase is oh my God, so. So, oh my God, so is an introductory phrase you can use to start your topic with like a surprise factor. So you say, oh my God, and then so is your transition phrase. So, for example, oh my God, so I have to tell you about this movie I saw. Or, oh my God, so I saw my neighbor in the shopping mall this morning. Or, oh my God, so did you see my new dog? It's kind of a weird one. Usually it's about a person, not about a dog, but who knows? You won't believe what happened to me the other day. The next expression is, you won't believe what happened to me the other day. You won't believe what happened to me the other day. Meaning, something happened to you and you think it's going to be a surprise to the person listening to you. You won't believe what happened to me the other day. So it's a very fast phrase because it sounds like you want to share very quickly. Like, you won't believe what happened to me. You can drop the other day if you want, or you can say, you won't believe what happened to me this morning. You won't believe what happened to me last night. You won't believe what happened to me this weekend. You won't believe what happened to me over my winter vacation. So that you won't believe what happened to me gets very, very quick and short. So examples, you won't believe what happened to me the other day. I ran into my ex-boss. Or, you won't believe what happened to me the other day. I tripped and fell down a flight of stairs. Or, you won't believe what happened to me the other day. I got a new parrot. Sure, I don't know. Maybe one of you can use that. Guess what? The next phrase is very short. The next phrase is like an exclamation, so an excited statement and a question. Guess what? Guess what? So, guess what is inviting the listener to guess what happened to you. Guess what? The full question would be, guess what happened? Or guess what happened to me? But we only say, guess what? So, guess what? And sometimes the listener guesses, and sometimes the listener just says, what? Usually the listener just says, what? So meaning you should continue the story. So if you say, guess what? I quit my job. Or guess what? I saw my best friend with a new guy I haven't seen before. Another example, guess what? I got a new car. Something like that. So some kind of shocking, like, difficult to guess situation. I haven't told you about this yet. The next expression is, I haven't told you about this yet. I haven't told you about this yet. So have not becomes haven't. I haven't told you about this yet. So maybe you have told other people, but this specific person, maybe you have not told that person your news or some information yet. But this yet implies you are planning to, or you want to tell them this. So it's kind of creates a little suspense. I haven't told you about this yet. So we could use this like, I haven't told you about this yet. I'm going to France next summer. Or I haven't told you about this yet, but I broke up with my boyfriend last night. Or I haven't told you about this yet, but I'm throwing a big party for my coworker this weekend. Can you come? Other examples, I haven't told you about this yet. I saw my boss out for dinner with someone who's not his wife. Oh my God, that's not true. That's not true. Or, I haven't told you about this yet. I heard that the company is gonna go bankrupt. Also not true. Okay, so those are some pretty juicy gossip. That's an expression we use. We say juicy gossip is something that's like really, really interesting gossip or a really interesting story about people. We say juicy gossip for that. Have you heard about? The next expression is have you heard about blah, blah, blah. Have you heard about can be followed with a noun phrase. Have you heard about a a person? You can use a person. Or have you heard about a situation? You can use both. You can use an object too. So have you heard about the new iPhone? Or have you heard about the new office policies? You can use that for pretty much anything you want to inform your listener about. So have you heard about is usually said very quickly. Have you heard about? So the you becomes shortened to ya. Have you heard about? Have you heard about blah, blah, blah? So have you heard about the new secretary? Have you heard about our new boss? Or have you heard about my coworker quitting his job? Have you heard about the neighbors above us? They're moving. So you can use people here for gossip expressions, or you can use objects in this expression just to introduce something new. Very useful phrase. Have you heard about my mom? Sorry, Mom. I don't know why you came into that one. Okay. So the other day, the next expression is kind of like the beginning to a story. So maybe this can be for gossip. Maybe it can just be like a story, something that interesting or maybe boring that happened to you. The expression is, so the other day. So the other day. So the other day here means not today, some other day. Which day? It doesn't really matter. It's not really important, but we say the other day, some day in the past. This expression is used for it. So we can say, so the other day I was sitting at my desk in the office when my manager came and asked if he could speak to me. Dun, dun, dun. Or, so the other day I was shopping and I ran into my ex-boyfriend. Or, so the other day I was renting a car and the former president of the United States came into the car rental shop. What? All right, so the other day, just some day in the past. So I was talking with, and the next one you can use maybe for gossip sometimes, but also you can use for making plans. It's, so I was talking with someone and blah, blah, blah. So I was talking with someone means you were having a conversation at another time with a person and you want to kind of report information or share something from that conversation with the person listening now. So I might say, so I was talking with Risa and I think that we should plan a party for this weekend. What do you think? So I was talking with my team about this and I think that we should make some changes. So that's a very kind of everyday work situation use of this phrase. But you can also use it for gossip, like, so I was talking to my best friend and I think I'm gonna move. Or I was talking to my parents and I think it's best if we break up. Oh, so it can be for plans, it can be for gossip, it can be for just any conversation plus a report. What's up with? The next expression is kind of a little like mysterious. Then the expression is, what's up with blah, blah, blah. Usually, what's up with person for gossip, meaning there's like the nuance here is there's some problem or it seems like something's wrong with this person. They're unhappy, they're sad, they're angry, some kind of negative emotion. We use this. So it's like, what's up with Stevens? I haven't heard from him lately. What's up with your brother? He seems really upset. Or what's up with your neighbor? Why is he so noisy? Or what's up with your boss? He's so strict. So it sounds like there's some problem. We usually use this intonation. What's up with nah, to introduce somebody who has a problem. We don't say, what's up? It's not that. It's not that sort of hello expression. It's an expression for a problem. You can also use a noun phrase that is not a person here, like, what's up with this new office policy? Or what's up with this new rule at work? Or what's up with this new item on the menu at this restaurant? It's super weird. So what's up with blah, blah, blah has sort of a negative nuance. You can use it for people to talk about strange behavior. What's up with you? Have you heard from lately? The next expression is, have you heard from blah, blah, blah lately? Have you heard from person lately? Have you heard from Stevens lately? I haven't seen him. Have you heard from your mom lately? Have you heard from your dad lately? Have you heard from your brother lately? Have you heard from your landlord lately? I don't know why you hear from your landlord, but have you heard from someone lately? There is sort of a little bit of an expectation that you are in contact with the person involved in this sentence. Like you have some relationship. Maybe it's a family relationship, romantic relationship, professional relationship. There's some relationship with this person. And lately is like, have you heard from them recently, lately, in the last few days, in the last few weeks? So you can use this if, for example, you are looking for someone or you're worried about someone. You can use this here. You can also use it just to check in about some other person without asking that person directly. So like if I want to ask about, I'm using Risa in my example. Risa is our Japanese channel host. If I want to ask about how Risa is, but I don't want to ask Risa, I know maybe she's busy or, I don't know, for some reason it's difficult to talk to her. I can ask like my coworker, I can say, hey, have you heard from Risa lately? It seems she's really busy. Or have you heard from so-and-so lately? It seems they're busy. So if I want to ask about another person, but I don't want to bother this person or that something makes it difficult, I can use have you heard from blah, blah, blah recently or lately to ask about them. Very useful phrase. I have to tell you about. Next expression. The next expression is I have to tell you about blah, blah, blah. I have to tell you. So have to becomes have to. I have to tell you about. It has a nice sound. I have to tell you about blah, blah, blah. Or I have to tell you about something. So I have to tell you about my weekend. I have to tell you about Stevens. I have to tell you about my mom. I have to tell you about my boyfriend. I have to tell you about my girlfriend. Whatever it is, some person used at the end of this sentence creates a nuance like there's exciting news about that person. Or I have to tell you about this thing that happened. You can use a situation at the end of the sentence too, but you're using I have to at the beginning of the sentence. So that sounds like it's really important. Like I feel it's so important. It's my responsibility to tell you because this is so exciting. Of course, you can use this in more boring situations as well. Like I have to tell you about the new office policy. You can use it in that way with a very flat intonation, but for gossip purposes, use I have to tell you about blah, blah, blah. That sounds really good. So what do you have to tell somebody about? I have to tell you about this new idea I have for a business. Or I have to tell you about what happened to me last night. Okay, so there are these really exciting ways that we can introduce things that happened or that we can talk about people or whatever.
Okay, want to speed up your language learning? Get access to all of our best PDF cheat sheets for free. Just click the link in the description and sign up for your free lifetime account right now.
The difference between someone, everyone, and anyone, and somebody, anybody, and everybody. Let's get started by looking at the meanings of these words and how we use them. Okay, let's begin with someone and somebody to begin with. You can remember someone and somebody and anyone and anybody follow very similar rules as some and any. If you've seen the video on our channel talking about some and any, maybe you remember the rules that I'm going to explain here. You can check that video for some extra information about those grammar points too. So let's start with someone and somebody. We use someone and somebody in positive statements. So a simple statement, not a question, in other words. When we make a positive statement, we use someone and somebody in that sentence structure. We also use these two words in requests and in offers. So keep in mind, these are two categories of question. So a request question or an offer question. Let's take a look at some examples of this now. First of all, there's someone at the office. So here I've chosen someone. There's someone at the office. This is a positive statement. So not a question, just a statement. It's a positive here. The next example, can you send someone to help me? Can you send someone to help me? This is a request, so a specific type of question, a request question. Can you send someone to help me? The third example sentence is an offer. Would you like to talk to somebody? Would you like to talk to somebody? So here we have request, offer, positive statement. We can use someone or somebody in each of these examples. So I've used someone, and somebody here, but actually we can change each of these to the other choice. Both are fine in each of these example sentences. I'll talk more about the difference between one and buddy a little bit later. For now, however, let's move on to the difference between anyone and anybody. Okay, so this is a key difference between someone and somebody. Anyone and anybody, this is used in negative statements. These are used in negative statements. Someone and somebody used in positive statements. So this follows the same rule as some and any. So in negative statements, and we use anyone and anybody in information questions. So that means that not requests, not offers, but you're looking for some kind of information. We use anyone and anybody in these cases. So let's look at a few examples of this. First, I don't think anyone is at the office. Don't think anyone is at the office. So here we've used anyone because it's a negative. Here's my negative. It's in the do not. So not right here. This is my negative. Therefore, I've used anyone here. One more example sentence, a question this time. Has anybody seen my keys? Here I've used anybody. I've used this because this is an information question. I'm looking for some information I don't have now. This is not a request, it's not an offer. So I shouldn't use someone or somebody. I need to use anyone or anybody. I'm looking for information. This third example sentence is the same. Why hasn't anyone returned my calls? Here, anyone. And I'm looking for information. In this case, a why. This is a why question. So again, not a request, not an offer. I'm looking to find something new. I'm looking for information, so I should use anyone. Again, just as I talked about with someone and somebody, I can change this anyone, anybody, and anyone to the other word. It's fine to use the other word here. For example, anybody, anyone, anybody. That's perfectly fine. Again, I'll explain more a little bit later here. But remember, anyone and anybody is used in negative statements. Someone, somebody used in positive statements. This is one key difference. Okay, but let's move along now to everyone and everybody. Everyone and everybody, this will follow kind of a different rule than someone and anyone. We use everyone and everybody to refer to all people related to a situation or related to a group. So this could mean a class, it could mean every person in an office, it could mean in a city, in a country. So it just depends on the group or the situation. We use this word when we want to talk about all people related to that group or related to the situation. So let's look at some examples. Okay, first one. Everyone in our class graduated. So here, everyone in our class graduated refers to all the people in our class. So everyone in that group of people. In this case, the group is the class. So all people in the class. Another example, it was great to see everybody at the reunion. So everybody here shows us, again, all people. And this could be a class reunion, it could be a family reunion, a company reunion. So this just means it was great to see all the related people. So the people related to the situation at this reunion event. One more example then. Everybody had a great time. So here, everybody shows us everybody in the situation. So maybe everybody who attended the event had a great time. Everybody who attended the party had a great time. This is quite a common expression after an event of some kind. So again, as we saw with the first two groups, we can actually change each of these words to the other word. So everyone can be replaced with everybody. Same thing here. Everybody and everybody can be replaced with everyone. So I want to end this lesson with a quick introduction or a quick overview to the difference between these two endings, one and buddy. What is the difference here? Really, one, the words that end in one, someone, anyone, and everyone, they sound more formal than the words that end in buddy. So we can actually use these interchangeably. Interchangeably means we can mix and match them. We can choose which one we prefer. So that means the meanings are the same, like their purpose is the same. It's just up to us to choose. So why would we do this? Why would we choose one word and not the other word? You can choose according to the syllables. If you remember, syllables is the number of beats. A syllable is a beat of a word. So for example, somebody has 3 beats. Someone has only 2 beats, 2 syllables. This is important when you are writing, especially like writing poetry, writing lyrics for music, or maybe you're trying to write a nice essay, for example. We are listening for which words sound nice to our ears. So sometimes the word somebody sounds nice, sometimes the word someone sounds better. So it's up to us, meaning we can decide, we can choose which word we prefer to use. So you just have to listen and kind of feel which you prefer. There's no difference in meaning, it's just a sound preference and a little bit of a formality difference. So I hope that this lesson helped you understand the differences between these words a little bit. As I said, if you want some more information about the difference between some and any, you can search the YouTube channel for that video as well. First question comes from Flavia. Hi, Flavia. Flavia says, hi, Alicia. Can you explain why you use if I were you instead of was? Yeah, so the pattern if I were you is an example of what's called the subjunctive mood. So the subjunctive mood is something that we use to talk about unreal situations, so things that are not true. So we use if I were you to talk about the unreal situation, the unreal present situation, which refers to like the fact that I am not you, like that's not a true situation. So we use this subjunctive pattern, if I were you, to talk about that. If I was, however, would begin a simple past statement. So something in the past, but maybe the speaker is not so certain about that past thing. So for example, if I was wrong, I'm sorry. Or if I was noisy last night, I apologize. So that means the speaker has some uncertainty about the past. Like if I was noisy last night, like I don't know if I was, but maybe I was. If I was, I apologize. So those are past situations that could be possible. They're not necessarily like unreal. But we want to maybe express like an apology, or we want to express some kind of uncertainty about something that might have affected someone in the past. So maybe I was noisy last night, or maybe I was wrong, for example. I don't know, but if I was, then I apologize, or I'm sorry. So we use this if I was for these simple past tense statements. So actually you will commonly hear native speakers using if I was you, but it's not like that's going to cause any communication problems, actually. So yes, the technically correct pattern to use is if I were you, but there are so many people that say if I was, that it's not like a communication problem. So technically, yes, it's incorrect to say if I was, but you're not going to have any problems if you use that pattern instead. So that's the basic difference. If I were you refers to an unreal present situation. If I was something refers to uncertainty about a past situation or a past event. So I hope that this helps you. Thanks very much for the question. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Kirill. Hi, Kirill. Kirill says, Alicia, I'm stumped by trying to distinguish the difference in meaning between evaluate and assess. Could you help me? Yeah, great question. And actually native speakers have trouble with the difference between these words too. So let's talk first about the word evaluate. So a great way to remember the difference between the words evaluate and assess is to consider that inside the word evaluate is the word value. So when we evaluate something, we are assigning or we are giving some value to that thing or to that person. This can mean like the price of something. This can mean the significance of something. This can mean like the condition of something. So some examples. We evaluated this camera and gave it an 8 out of 10 score. Our company's software was evaluated by a tech website and given a low rating. So in each of these example sentences, a certain level of value is assigned or is given to something or to someone. So when we evaluate, we're doing it in order to give value or to assign or to find the value of something. So it could be a score, it could be a price. So let's compare this to the word assess. The pronunciation is assess, assess. So the word assess then has the same feel of evaluate, but the purpose of assess is to understand something better. So we don't assess something in order to assign a value to that thing. We're assessing something in order to understand it better. So we try to understand deeper information or to learn more about the details of something. We assess something. So you might assess a situation. That means you look deep into the details to better understand the situation. Some more examples. We need to assess the security of the company's data. He assessed his housing options before making a decision. So this is the difference between evaluate and assess. If you're ever not sure, just remember that the word value is inside evaluate to help you remember that evaluate is used to assign value to something. So I hope that this helps you. Thanks very much for the question. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Yasser. Hi, Yasser. Yasser says, what is the meaning of the expression word? I've seen it in some movies and I can't figure out what it means. Yeah, word is like a strong, laid-back expression of agreement among close friends. You can also use it to ask, really? Or is that true? If you use kind of a question intonation, so word. So you might also hear it used in a situation where someone does something that you really admire or that you kind of respect or you think is impressive, and you might hear someone say word in response to that. So that kind of shows support or that you were impressed or you admire that thing. I feel like in a lot of cases it's just used as a simple expression of agreement or understanding. For example, we're gonna watch the game tonight. Word. Personally, I don't use this word that much because it is kind of a cool word and I'm not really a cool hip-hop street culture kind of person. But if you want to use it, I would recommend using it among very close friends and in very casual situations. So I hope that this helps you understand it. Thanks very much for the question. All right, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Brian Talaigua. Hi, Brian. Brian says, hi, Alicia. Can you please explain to me the meanings and uses of the word happen, specifically in these cases? Do you happen to? My sister happens to be a lawyer, etc. I'm confused. Yeah, this is a nice question. Okay, to begin with, I want to introduce a few very common patterns that we see with the word happen. Let's take a look. Do you happen to have? Would you happen to know if? It just so happens that. My sister happens to be. Okay, so kind of the theme with this use of the word happen is chance or by chance of something. So let's take a look at the first two patterns here. These first two are question patterns. So the first one was, do you happen to have? And the second one was, would you happen to know if? So another way to say these is there any chance you have? Or is there any chance you know? So you're asking very politely, is there a possibility? Is there a chance of this thing? So we use this form of happen to make very formal or very soft requests. So this is really useful when you're speaking to a stranger. So if you can imagine you're a tourist and you need some help in a city that you are unfamiliar with, you could say to a nearby person, excuse me, do you happen to know where I could buy a coffee around here? Or, excuse me, would you happen to have the time? So that's you're making a very soft request. That's saying, is there any chance, or is it possible at all that you have this information, or you could do this for me? So it's a very soft request form. So let's take a look at the other two sentence patterns that I introduced here. These are some statement patterns. So again, these do mean by chance, but for these kinds of statements, the context is actually really important. The situation is important. So for example, it just so happens that I got 2 free tickets to that concert you were talking about last week. So it just so happens means like by chance. Or like something happened like that was very coincidental. It just so happens that this situation fits nicely with something else in my life right now. So it just so happens I got these free tickets, and this relates to having this discussion with you about a concert last week. So those two things kind of fit nicely together. It's a nice little coincidence. So it just so happens that is used to do that. So the other example pattern that you introduced, my sister happens to be a lawyer, is probably something you would see in a situation where a person is looking for a lawyer, and the person who says that sentence is introducing that, like, oh no, I need a lawyer. Do you have any recommendations? And person B might say, oh, my sister happens to be a lawyer. So that's like saying, by chance, my sister is a lawyer. Like coincidentally, like it matches your situation nicely. That's kind of the feeling of happens to, in this case, happens to be a lawyer. So yes, you could say like, oh, my sister is a lawyer. That's fine as well, but it doesn't have that same nuance of coincidence. So kind of think of happens to, or like happens to be, as meaning by chance in these statement situations. And when you're using it as a question, it creates like this formal, very gentle, like, is it possible to type request. So I hope that that helps you understand using the word happen or happens in cases like these. Thanks very much for the question. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Cloudy. Hi, Cloudy. Cloudy says, what's the difference between these words? Admire, adore, and idolize. Thanks. Okay, let's compare. Let's make some example sentences first. I admire Beyonce. I adore Beyonce. I idolize Beyonce. Okay, so first let's look at I admire Beyonce. So we use admire for people, usually, people that we respect. So maybe we respect that person's work, or we want to be more like that person, or we think they've done like great things. They're very talented. So if I say I admire Beyonce, it means like I respect her work. So we use admire to mean like something or someone that we respect. The second sentence, I adore Beyonce, uses the word adore, which means you love something. So when we say I adore something, we can use it to talk about like people, usually people in our lives. Sometimes we use it to talk about like our favorite activities as well. Like I adore arts and crafts, perhaps. But when we use it to talk about people, it's usually for people that we have a close relationship to. So like a Beyonce superfan might say like, I adore Beyonce, I just love her. So that means that they feel like a close connection to that person, or like they really, really enjoy, in this case, the celebrity's work. So to adore something can be used in that way. Also within families, like parents could say they adore their children. So to adore means to love something and have a very close connection, or you feel like you have a close connection with someone. Then the final example sentence was, I idolize Beyonce. I idolize. So to idolize, that verb has the word idol inside. So idol actually has like a religious kind of connection. So an idol was something like to be worshipped. So like a god or a goddess figure sort of thing. So to idolize something means to kind of have that thing as like above you. So you have like this image, in this case like Beyonce. I idolize Beyonce. That means she's like above everything. Like we really appreciate her. Like we think she's just amazing and she's like above everybody else. So to idolize someone is like, has almost like this image of worshiping someone. So maybe like a super Beyonce fan could say like, I idolize Beyonce. I want to be like her. Like, I want to do everything a fan can do. So maybe that's idolize in this case. So probably the most common words here are admire and adore. Idolize is not used nearly as much as these two, but that's the difference between those words. So I hope that that helps you understand.
Want to speed up your language learning? Get access to all of our best PDF cheat sheets for free. Just click the link in the description and sign up for your free lifetime account right now.
Let's begin with the basic definition of the verb set. So, the basic definition. The basic definition is to put something in a place or in a position. Some examples of this. I always set my keys on the counter. Set your bag next to the table. Okay, let's look at the conjugations for this verb. Present, set, sets. Past, set. Past participle, set. Progressive, setting. All right, now let's look at some additional meanings for this verb. So the first additional meaning of the verb set refers to the position, meaning like the place, or the time that a story happens. So some examples. The movie is set in New York City. My favorite book is set in the distant future. So in these examples, we see the verb set is used to refer to the place or the time when a story happens. So in the first example, I say, the movie is set in New York City. Means the story takes place in New York City. So set means takes place in. The story happens in New York City. But we use set to explain that. My favorite book is set in the distant future. So this refers to a time. So the setting, the point in time when the story happens is in the distant future. So distant future means far, far, far in the future. Into the future, not the past, the future. So in the distant future, this story happens in the distant future, but we use set. So my favorite story, my favorite book is set in the distant future. So here we see it used to refer to the location or the time when a story takes place. The second meaning for today is to cause someone or something to be in a condition. So this is a very open, this is a very broad meaning. Let's look at a few examples, some common examples here. First, you set my house on fire? The performance animal was set free. Okay, so in the first example, very dramatic example, I said, you set my house on fire. So here I said set, and then the object here is my house. You set my house, and then the condition is on fire. So on fire means it's burning, flames, bad. My house is gonna, crumble to pieces. You set my house on fire means you caused my house to be in the condition of on fire. You caused my house to be flaming. That's bad, of course, in this case. But set refers to causing an object to be in that condition. We see the same thing in the second example sentence. The performance animal was set free. So free here we see is the condition. The animal, a performance animal, probably in like a zoo or a water park or something, was set, so caused to be free, caused to become free. So the performance animal was not free before. It was set free. It was caused to become free. So we can see set is used to cause a change in condition in something. These are a couple examples of how to do that. The third meaning for today is to establish something. So to establish something like a policy or a new condition, a record, something like that. So examples of this. The school is setting new rules for next year. They're about to set a new record. Okay. So here, set is used to mean establishing something. In the first example sentence, I said the school is setting new rules for next year. So that means the school is establishing now. The school is in the process of establishing new policies for the next year, new rules. So setting, I've used in the progressive tense, means establishing or creating. In the second example sentence, they're going to set a new record, means they're going to establish, they're going to create a new record. So we use set in this case to set a record. Let's go to the fourth meaning for this verb. The fourth meaning here is to get something ready for use. So like we set up the camera, or we set up the iPad, we set up the lights for this, filming operation here. So set up is a very, very common way of using the verb set, to set up something. Other examples, I spent all day setting up my computer. Will you set the alarm for 8 a.m.? So in my second sentence there, you heard I said, will you set the alarm for 8 a.m.? So that means it's like I'm preparing the alarm. In that case, I'm not like preparing something for use. I'm preparing a function in that case. So we don't say, will you set up the alarm for 8 a.m.? We'll just say, set the alarm for 8 a.m. We would say set up the computer because I want to use it. I'm not setting a function of the computer. We could say set the clock on the computer. We would not say set up the clock. We would say set the clock. So set the clock is like establishing the correct time. To set up something is like to prepare it to be used. So set up a computer, good. Set up a software, fine. But set a clock, set an alarm. It's like to decide a time or to like establish some kind of functionality. We don't need to use up in those cases. So this will be an addition to meaning number 4. I want to say just quick note about how it's often used. Okay, so with this meaning, when we use the verb set to refer to getting something ready to use, like with a computer, for example, we'll often follow set with the preposition up. So, for example, I want to set up my computer, or I spent all day setting up my computer in my original example sentence. So you might see set plus up. It's commonly used with up. Not always. If you're talking more about functionality, like set an alarm or set the clock, then you don't need to use a preposition. But when you're talking about preparing something for use, you'll often see that up, the preposition up, is used in addition to set. So to set up something. So one more example might be to set the coffee pot in the coffee maker. So you're preparing it for use, but we don't say set up the coffee pot. We say set the coffee pot in the coffee maker to prepare it for use. Let's talk about some variations of how you can use the verb set. First one, to set back, to set back. To set back means to cause a delay in something. Examples, I broke my wrist and set back my project schedule. That's true. This mistake has set us back 2 weeks. So here we're seeing set back, to set something back, causing a delay. So I broke my wrist and set back my project schedule. So I broke my wrist and caused my project schedule to be delayed. I caused a delay in the project as a result of breaking my wrist. So to cause a delay. And the second one, this mistake has set us back 2 weeks. So this mistake has set us back. So meaning caused us a delay by 2 weeks. So set us. We see the object there is included in the verb, the phrasal verb, set us back. So what was set back? Us in our project and whatever it is we're working on. This mistake has set us back 2 weeks. We were caused to be delayed by the mistake. So to set back. Or we can also use it as a noun, a setback. The second variation is to set out. To set out. This actually has 2 meanings. It can mean to begin a journey, especially like a walking journey, to set out for something. It can also mean to begin an activity. So let's look at some examples. First, they set out early in the morning. He set out to build his own company. So in the first example sentence, they set out early in the morning means they left. They began their journey early in the morning. So this is especially the case for like walking journeys. It's not only for walking journeys, but it kind of has the feeling of a little more like bodily journeying somehow. So like we set out on our bike ride or something like that. There's something kind of bodily happening, I guess, if that makes sense. Then in the second example, he set out to build his own company. So set out means like he started the activity of building his own company is what that means. Or like she set out to become the top in her class, for example. So she started the activity of working to become top in her class. So to set out to do something is to start working towards something. So to start an activity, usually with some like goal in mind. To set out to do something. 10 phrasal verbs for eating and drinking. So let's get started.
Drink up. The first phrasal verb is drink up. Drink up. Drink up is a cheerful phrase we use that means let's start drinking or let's enjoy drinking or please drink. So you can use it when everybody gets their drinks. You can say, all right, our beers are here. Let's drink up. It means it has the nuance of drink a lot. Like you can also use it like as a challenge to someone, like someone who loses a bet or loses like an argument. You can say drink up as kind of a challenge. It's sort of like a friendly command for drink. So in a sentence, our beers are here. Everybody drink up. Take down. The next phrasal verb is take down. Take down, as in take down an order. Take down is a phrasal verb that the staff, like waiter or waitress, will use at the restaurant. They may come to your table and say, can I take down your order? They may also say, can I take your order, of course. But to take down is like to take your order and write it down on a notepad, for example, on a notebook. So take down your order. You might hear this. So in a sentence, when you're ready, I can take down your order. Ring up. The next word is ring up. Ring up. We use ring up to mean total, to total something, to total a bill, to total the amount of something at a restaurant or shopping too, for example. So again, this is a word that wait staff, the staff at the restaurant may use. So when you finish your meal, they will ring up your bill. They will ring up your total, and you will pay that amount at the end of your meal. So in a sentence, I'll ring up your bill at the cash register. Set down. The next phrasal verb is set down. Set down. So we use set down for items which we are carrying, and then we set or we place on a table. So usually there's like a downward motion. If you're carrying something, like you can use it for a backpack if you want to, like to set down, to drop something, to leave something, but to put it in, like on a table, to put it in a place specifically there. So we can use set down at a restaurant, like please set the plate down on the table, or can you set down my drink over there, or I'll set down your order over here. So set down means to place something, something you were carrying, to place it on a table or to place it on a desk. So set down. In a sentence, please set down the plates carefully. Cut up. The next phrasal verb is cut up. Cut up. We use cut up to mean cut, but cut up usually means to cut all of something. So if you receive like, I don't know, chicken or beef or pork or some large item you need to cut, we say cut up to mean cut the entire piece, to cut everything you receive. So in a sentence, make sure to cut up steak into small pieces, for example. It's easier for children to eat. Or I take a long time to cut up my meat, for example. So cut up means cut everything. Cut into. The next phrasal verb is cut into. So to cut into means just to make one slice into something. Usually we use cut into for like the first slice, like we use it maybe to check that something is properly cooked sometimes. So like to cut into a chicken or to cut into turkey. We usually use this for the first slice. So the first experience, like when I cut into the chicken, all the juices came out. It looked delicious. I'm excited to cut into my Thanksgiving turkey this year. Or I'm really looking forward to cutting into that steak later. It looked great. So cut into is kind of that first cut, that initial cut where you can see maybe what the meat looks like, or you get a sense of how the rest of your meal is going to taste. So cut into, the first slice. I want to cut into my dinner later. Sop up. The next phrasal verb is sop up. Sop up. So to sop means to soak with liquid. To soak with liquid. To sop up, therefore, is like to soak liquid from like a bowl or from a cup or something. But we use this with bread usually. So if you're eating soup, for example, and there is leftover soup in your bowl, you can take bread and sop up, soak up the liquid from your soup with bread. So to sop up liquid. So to soak and pick up something is the image here. So to sop up bread. So for example, I like to sop up my soup with bread, or I like to sop up extra sauce with a biscuit, for example. So usually there's some bread and some sauce or liquid we use with this phrase. Cool down. The next phrasal verb is cool down. Cool down means to let something become lower temperature naturally. So to let something cool down really means to allow something to gradually go to a lower temperature. If you make a pie, for example, it's very hot when it comes out of the oven. So oftentimes the recipe will say, allow to cool down and serve, for example. So meaning after the pie is taken from the oven, you should let the temperature cool. You should let the temperature come down before eating. So to cool down is like reducing the temperature, but just naturally over time. So in a sentence, make sure to let your mashed potatoes cool down before you try to eat them. Heat up. So the next phrasal verb is heat up. Heat up. We use heat up usually to talk about microwave use or oven use. So it's taking a cold food or maybe a frozen food, usually just a cold food kept in the refrigerator, put it in the microwave and turn it on to heat the food, to make it warm again. So to heat up is like to move the heat level up, to increase the temperature of the food. We use the phrasal verb heat up to do this. So, for example, I like to heat up my pizza before I eat it, my leftover pizza. Or you should heat up yesterday's soup. It would be really good to have that tonight. Or maybe we should heat up something quick for dinner tonight. So heat up means to increase the temperature of a cold thing. Chow down. So the next phrasal verb is sort of a slang expression. It's chow down. Chow down means like to eat really excitedly. It's not a phrasal verb I personally use very much, but you can use it to express your enthusiasm for something. So it's typically used for like sort of junk food type things or like really everyday foods. Like in the USA, it's like sandwiches or hot dogs or like something you might get at like a sporting event. We'll say like, I want to chow down on a sandwich later, or I want to chow down on some pizza after this. So to chow down is like enthusiastically eat. Like you're not thinking about being polite. You're not worried about looking nice while you eat. You're just enjoying eating very enthusiastically. So like, oh, let's chow down on some pizza later, for example. So, or for example, like we're going to chow down on some barbecue this weekend. It'll be great.
First question this week comes from Saad. Hi, Saad. Saad says, hi, Alicia. I want to know the difference between all, every, and each. Okay, this is a big topic. I made a whiteboard video about this recently, and it will be out on the channel eventually, but here's a quick introduction. Let's begin with all. All means 100% of something. So we use all when we're talking about a group. So many of something and 100%. We want to focus on the group with all. Some examples. All the questions in this series come from viewers. All my family members live in another country. We use every when we want to talk about the parts of a whole. We use this with the singular form of a noun. So some examples. Every person in our class passed the test. Every member of our team received an award. So in these cases, with every, we see that there are individual parts to a larger whole, to like a group. And we want to mention the individual parts, yes, but in relationship to the whole. We use every to do this in the singular form. Each then focuses on the individuals. So we're not focusing so much on a group, but we want to really focus on the individual. We can use each with the singular form and with the plural form of a noun. Examples. She wears earrings on each ear. Each person in our group gave a presentation. So another point with each is that we use each when there's only two of something. If there's more than two, you can use every or maybe each, depending on the situation. Just make sure if there's only two, like ears, for example, or arms or legs, make sure to use each. Using all or every will sound strange because we're focusing on large numbers. So that's a quick introduction to the differences between these words. I hope that that helps you, and please watch for the whiteboard video to come out soon.
Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Velina. Hi, Velina. Velina says, "Hi, Alicia. I would like to ask you about the difference between no wonder and wondering and how to use it in sentences." Okay, let's start with no wonder. So no wonder means that's why, that's why. So we use it when we kind of solve a mystery, sort of. It's like a small mystery, like no wonder this happened, or no wonder something in the past. When we're wondering, that's the progressive tense of the word wonder, it means we're thinking about something, like there's something we're curious about or something that we would like to know. But wondering is kind of like light thinking, I guess you could say. So I'm wondering about my future, maybe. So it's kind of you're dreaming or you're imagining something, perhaps. He's out of the country? No wonder he didn't answer my phone call. You're out of salt? No wonder your food tastes bland. Excuse me, I'm wondering where the restrooms are. I wonder what's going to happen next week. So in the last example sentence there, I used wonder in the present tense, meaning it's just something that I'm thinking about for the future. You could say, I'm wondering about next week. That's fine if you're actually doing it now with someone, but wondering refers to an action happening now in this moment. So I hope that that helps you understand no wonder and wondering. Thanks for the question. All right, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Sweet Devil. Hi again, Sweet Devil. Sweet Devil says, "Hi Alicia, my question. How do I pronounce these words in fast connecting speech? Of it, of her, of his." Okay, well, first with the her and his examples, that H sound almost disappears, like it becomes very reduced, of her and of his. I'll give some examples in a moment. With of it, the two kind of connect. They make a V sound. Patterns that might use something like this are not so common in everyday speech, but these are a couple cases where you might hear it. Your sandwich looks delicious. Can you give me some of it? That was a great performance. Did you make a recording of it? So in these examples, you can hear of it becomes of it, of it. Did you make a recording of it? Can I have some of it? So it's like a V sound there. Let's move on to the other two with the H sound. Which of her movies have you seen? Pictures of her are really interesting. So here, you can also hear that that H sound becomes very, very soft, and we have that same V sound with of. Pictures of her are really interesting. Which of her movies have you seen? The same thing happens with of his. How many of his books have you read? What do you think of his work? So we have that same V again with of, and the H sound is very, very soft. It's like I'm just exhaling the sound of is, of her as well, of it. So kind of a theme here is that the F becomes a quick V sound almost, and we're sort of just releasing air to make the H sound with the his and her examples. Of it, of her, of his. So I hope that this helps you with this pronunciation point. Thanks very much for the question. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Zohire. Hi, Zohire. Zohire says, what is the difference between persuading and convincing? Great question. Yeah, many people use these interchangeably, but there is a key difference. To convince someone means to change someone's mind, to change someone's way of thinking. So it refers to giving someone information with the intent of changing the way that they think. To persuade, however, is giving someone information or telling someone something with the aim of causing them to take an action. So to convince is referring to someone's thinking, to convince someone of an idea. To persuade someone is to cause them to take an action, like to persuade someone to give you money, for example. So convince, ideas, persuade, actions. Some examples. We convinced my parents that we were responsible enough to take the car out for the night. I convinced my team of the importance of social media. We persuaded management to buy us new equipment. I'm going to persuade my parents to loan me a few $100s for a vacation. So here you can see, convince is used to talk about a way of understanding or a way of thinking. Persuade is used to talk about getting someone to do an action, to take an action. So I hope that this helps you understand the difference. Thanks very much for the question. Okay, on to your next question. Next question comes from Luis Reggiori. Hi, Luis. Luis says, hi Alicia, my question is, what's the difference between hint and clue? In your videos, you say, for example, here we have a hint. Could we use clue instead? Ah, yeah, for sure. In a case like this, you could use hint and clue in the same way. Clue is something that I feel is used more when we have like a mystery or there's kind of like a puzzle to solve. You might also hear it in like detective stories. So if like a detective is investigating something and they're looking for evidence, when they find something, they might say, oh, this is a clue in their like mystery solving process.
Clue was my favorite board game.
But Clue, I mean, it's a great example. If anyone has played the game Clue, absolutely. Your job in that game is to collect information, to collect evidence about a murder that happened. So that's your job. You're collecting clues. So that's sort of the feel of the word clue. You're trying to solve a mystery. So when I said it's okay to use clue to replace the word hint, you can kind of imagine that like a sentence could be like a puzzle, especially if you're learning. So you're trying to solve the mystery of the meaning or the grammar of the sentence. So if you can think of it that way, it's okay to use the word clue. I prefer to use the word hint, and yes, I do use that word a lot in our videos, because hint has the feeling of something that's communicated indirectly. So I'm not saying something clearly, or maybe my example sentence doesn't say something clearly, but I'm looking for these small like bits of information that kind of tell me indirectly something. So when I say here we have a hint, it's like I'm kind of referring to this indirect information I'm getting from this sentence. Someone's vocabulary choice, for example, could give me like a hint about that person's emotions for the day. So it's an indirect way of receiving information is a hint. So I prefer to use hint, but I think it's fine to use the word clue. Let's look at a few more example sentences that maybe can show some of the differences in how these words are used. Also, I want to point out that both hint and clue can be used as nouns and as verbs. We found a clue at the scene of the crime, a fingerprint. We don't have any clues as to who robbed the store. This announcement from the CEO might include some clues about upcoming policy changes. Can you give me a hint about your surprise party plans? Management hinted that we might get a bigger budget next year. Here's a hint about the meaning of the sentence. Okay, so I hope that this helps answer your question about clue and hint. Thanks very much for sending it. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Mohammed Saleh. Hi, Mohammed. Mohammed said, what's the difference between sympathy and empathy? Yeah, sympathy refers to seeing feelings in another person, seeing emotions in someone else, and recognizing those feelings because you have also experienced them. So if, for example, your colleague or your friend, like they have an emotional situation, like a family member has passed away, and you have also experienced that, you can say you experience sympathy for that person because you have the same experience. That's the noun form, sympathy. As a verb, it's sympathize. As an adjective, it's sympathetic. Some example sentences. I can sympathize with your work struggles. We had a tough time last month. I'm lucky to have a boss that's very sympathetic. So empathy is different from sympathy in that we recognize feelings in another person, but we have not experienced that situation ourselves. We only recognize it, and we can maybe imagine what the other person feels like, but we don't have that experience ourselves. So empathy is the noun form, to empathize is the verb, and empathetic is the adjective. Some examples. I was so relieved my friends empathized with my need for support. It's wonderful to have empathetic colleagues. So I hope that this helps you understand the difference between sympathy, shared feeling, and empathy, an understanding of someone else's feeling. Hope that that helps you. Want to speed up your language learning? Get access to all of our best PDF cheat sheets for free. Just click the link in the description and sign up for your free lifetime account right now. Today I'm going to talk about the difference between which and that. Which and that are both relative pronouns, but a lot of people confuse the two. So let's talk about how to use them. Okay, first, a quick overview. Which, first, we use which in what are called non-restrictive relative clauses. We use that, on the other hand, in restrictive relative clauses. So before we continue, let's talk about the difference between non-restrictive clauses and restrictive clauses. The difference here, a non-restrictive clause, first of all, where we use which, is a clause that does not have information essential to understanding the noun it is connected to. I'll show you some examples in just a minute. A restrictive clause, however, is a clause that has information essential to our understanding of that noun. So we need the information in the restrictive clause to completely understand the noun or the noun phrase it is attached to. A non-restrictive clause is sort of extra information. We don't need the information to understand the noun or the noun phrase. It just provides some more information. So let's take a look at a few examples of this. The first example I have is rather extreme, but it's just to show the differences between these two. First, the school that I parked my car next to is dangerous. So here my noun is school. Here I've got the relative pronoun that. I have the school that I parked my car next to is dangerous. I've used that here because my clause is a restrictive clause. I need this information. The school that I parked my car next to is dangerous. If I remove this, the school is dangerous, the sentence is correct. However, the meaning changes. The key here is that I parked my car there, so I want to explain that specifically the school that I parked my car next to, this school in particular, is dangerous. So that shows us that it's a restrictive clause. We have to use that in this sentence because the information is essential to our understanding. In this sentence, however, the school, which has a tennis court, is dangerous. I've used which. So which is a non-restrictive, is used in non-restrictive clauses. This shows us it is extra information. The school has a tennis court. Do I need to know this information? No, it's just extra information. If I remove this clause, the school is dangerous. The root sentence, the basic sentence, stays the same. This is just extra information. It doesn't necessarily tell us essential information about the situation. So we use which to show that. It's a non-restrictive relative clause. As I said, this is a rather extreme example, so let's take a look at something that's a little bit more complex. Okay, let's look at the next two sentences. First, the car, which I bought last year, is already having trouble. And the car that I bought last year is already having trouble. These are very similar sounding sentences. However, our choice of which or that, as well as the commas, which I'll talk about later, have changed the meaning. So there are a couple key differences here. One, by seeing that in the first sentence that we're using a non-restrictive clause here with which, we see the car which I bought last year. This shows us that this is extra information about the car. Here, however, we see that this is essential information. The car that I bought last year is already having trouble. So the speaker could be saying here, with this sentence, the second sentence, the car that I bought last year, specifically a car that the speaker purchased the previous year. This sentence means, therefore, the speaker might have other cars. The speaker is specifically meaning this specific car that he or she bought last year. In this sentence, with the non-restrictive clause, we don't have the same nuance. The car, which I bought last year, is just extra information in this sentence. So here, the car that I bought last year, this is indicating a specific car. This one, with the non-restrictive clause, it's just giving us extra information. So the speaker may or may not have another car. We don't know. So that's all I want to say about that. Okay, but a question that many people have is how do you know whether it's a restrictive or a non-restrictive clause? So this is a quick tip, a quick hint for native speakers and non-native speakers, actually. Is it restrictive, non-restrictive? How do I know? To do that, remove the clause. Just take the clause out of the sentence. Is the meaning of the sentence the same? Is the sentence still grammatically correct? Is it okay? If yes, if the sentence is okay, the meaning is the same, it's a non-restrictive clause.
If no, if the meaning changes, if you lose some key information, it is a restrictive clause. So this is a quick hint. If you're not sure whether to use which or whether to use that, try this test, this quick test. Just take it out and see if the meaning changes. The last thing I want to talk about here is the use of commas. So you'll notice I used commas throughout this lesson, and also when I was reading, they kind of create a natural pause around this extra information. But when do you use them? We should use commas around non-restrictive clauses. So you can see I used them here and here in the example sentences. We use commas around non-restrictive clauses only. Again, this lesson, comma, which is being recorded, comma, is about which and that. So when you're reading, it creates a natural pause. So the reader knows there's going to be like extra information there. The reader can understand through use of these commas. However, do not use commas around restrictive clauses. For example, the lesson that I just taught was about how to use which and that. This is a restrictive clause. So I mean specifically this lesson that I just taught was about how to use which and that. I should not include commas here because I'm not including any extra information. All of the information is essential. It's the same with all of the other example sentences I used in this lesson. There are no commas included because all of the information is essential. The reader needs to understand everything in one piece. You can think of it that way. Okay. So that's an overview of the differences between which and that, restrictive clauses as well, and a couple of comma tips too. So I hope that this was a useful lesson for you. First question comes from Rizal Kuswandi. Hi again, Rizal. Rizal says, can you explain what modal verbs are? Sure. So a modal verb is a verb that's used to talk about possibility or ability. In English, we have will and would, shall and should, can and could, and may, might, and must. I might come to the office later. We should look for a new apartment. Can you help me move my sofa? So we use modal verbs in English to talk about possibility, yes, and ability too, as with can and could. But we also use them in patterns relating to giving advice and asking for advice, as well as making offers and requests too. So there are a couple of videos on the channel that you can check out for some more information about modal verbs. First, you can look at the must for possibility whiteboard video. There's also a video about would, especially using would for future tense situations. That's coming out very soon. You can also look at the will versus going to video on the channel for some future tense expressions. There are some other videos about modal verbs coming out and some other information about may and might and must in live streams. So please take a look around the channel for some more information, some detailed information about some of these modal verbs. And of course, there'll be more content coming up soon. So I hope that you check out those lessons, and I hope that you can get a good start on modal verb studies. Thanks very much for sending this along. I hope that helps clear up what a modal verb is. Okay, let's move along to your next question. Next question comes from Trang. Hi, Trang. Trang says, hi, Alicia. What does get rid of mean? Get rid of means throw away. We often use the word get rid of when we want to throw something away quickly, or when we really don't want that item, or it was really unnecessary. We can also use the phrase get rid of with people, but this is used when we want to cut someone off of a group or an organization, like when someone loses their job, for example. I finally got rid of my broken blender. Our company finally got rid of that employee who was stealing things. Okay, so I hope this helps you understand the expression get rid of something. Thanks very much for sending it. All right, onward to our next question. Next question this week comes from Muhammad Al-Daily. Hi again, Muhammad. Muhammad says, hi, Alicia. What's the difference between supposedly and supposably? And can I use them interchangeably? No, use supposedly, supposedly. So supposedly means according to something else, this is true.
But we use supposedly when we're like a little bit skeptical. So skeptical means we don't quite believe something is true. Like there's a little bit of like disbelief there. Like maybe someone is lying or someone is hiding something. So there's a feeling of suspicion. But it's like saying, according to this person, this situation is true. But we might not have all the information. So supposedly is the word that means this. Some examples. Supposedly, this is a good company to work for. Supposedly, he missed his flight because of traffic. So supposedly, the other word you introduced, means conceivable, something we are able to conceive of, something that we can suppose. So it does not have this meaning of according to someone plus disbelief. It doesn't have the same meaning as supposedly. In American English, speakers will use this word, but it's a mistake. They're intending, they're planning, they want to use the word supposedly, but they make a mistake and use supposably instead. So please use supposedly, not supposably. I hope that this helps you. Thanks very much for the question. All right, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Motahare. Motahare, I hope. Hello, Motahare. Motahare says, hi, Alicia. Is it true that we use of for something that belongs to a thing or animal, but apostrophe s for something that belongs to a human? No, it is not true. While yes, it does sound more natural to use apostrophe s for something that belongs to a human, it is not a rule to use of to show possession for something that belongs to a thing or an animal. Some examples, let's compare. The car's steering wheel came off in my hands. And the steering wheel of the car came off in my hands. My computer's screen is broken. The screen of my computer is broken. So these pairs of sentences actually mean the same thing. We're just showing possession in like different ways. I would say that native speakers will probably use whatever is the shortest way to describe whatever it is they want to say. So probably the apostrophe s pattern is most common. It's certainly not incorrect to use the of pattern. Both are fine to use here. When you're talking about people, however, it does sound much more natural to use the apostrophe s pattern. Using the of pattern to show possession for something we own or something we have sounds very weird when you're talking about people. Examples. My friend's hair is beautiful. The hair of my friend is beautiful. Your brother's shirt is so funny. The shirt of your brother is so funny. Very weird. So in these pairs, the second example sentence that uses of, while grammatically correct, sounds very strange. So when you're talking about people, use the apostrophe s pattern to talk about their characteristics or the things that they have. If you're talking about an object or an animal, you can choose whichever you prefer. As I said, native speakers tend to use the shortest expression possible. So in most cases, that's the apostrophe s pattern. Also note that in some formal situations, when we want to make something sound a bit more like grand or exciting, we will use that of pattern instead of the apostrophe s pattern, like the palace of the king instead of the king's palace. So that's going to make it sound a little bit more exciting. So in those cases, in like those formal, really exciting, like luxurious, expensive cases, you might hear of used more often. Okay, I hope that that helps you. Thanks very much for your question. Let's move along to our next question for this week. Next question comes from Bahij. Hi, Bahij. Bahij says, what's the difference between if I and if I will? For example, if I do that and if I will do that. If there's a difference, where is it? This is a good question, but the answer is that we use if I and not if I will. Actually, this relates back to our first question from this week's episode about modal verbs. When you're making a conditional sentence, that means a sentence that uses an if clause and a main clause. We do not use a modal verb in the if clause. If you want to use a modal verb, your modal verb needs to come in your main clause. So that means if you want to make an if sentence and you want to use will, you can use them in the same sentence, but you have to separate the clauses that they're in. That means if I something, 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 I will something, something, something. That's the pattern that you need to use. You cannot use if I will together in that way. You have to separate these two. Some examples. If I have the day off tomorrow, I'll go to the movie theater. If we save enough money this month, we can go to Hawaii this summer. So the second example sentence uses a different modal verb. I used can there instead of will. So just make sure that when you're making these conditional sentences that you don't use your modal verb in your if clause. Use it in your main clause. Also, remember, you can swap the order. You can switch the order so that it's main clause first, if clause second. That's fine. The same rule still applies. We can go to Hawaii this summer if we save enough money this month. So that's also fine. You can choose whichever you prefer. So I hope that that helps you. Use if I, not if I will. Let's get to your first question this week. First question comes from Karima. Hi again, Karima. Karima says, hi, Alicia. Could you please tell me what can't you tell means? Thanks. Yeah, we use the word tell to mean understand. So in casual conversations, tell means understand. So it doesn't mean like share information. It means understand or know. We use this a lot in questions. So for example, how can you tell? How can you tell means how do you know? So can you tell? How can you tell? This is quite a common pattern with this word. We would use can't you tell in a situation where we're trying to confirm that the listener does not understand or does not notice something. Can't you tell? So we're using the negative can't because we're confirming. Can't you tell? So we would use this in a situation where maybe the speaker has some like change or there's something that they hope the listener notices, but maybe the listener does not notice. And the speaker wants to confirm. For example, I got a haircut. Can't you tell? This is an expensive suit. Can't you tell? So another way of saying can't you tell is like, aren't you able to notice or aren't you able to understand? So you're confirming something like, I got a haircut. Can't you tell? It's like the speaker is surprised that the listener doesn't notice. So these are the situations where we would use the negative, can't you tell? When we use the positive form, can you tell, we're actually asking for information. So an example is like, oh no, I spilled coffee on my white pants. Can you tell? Meaning, are you able to notice or can you see that I spilled coffee on my pants, for example? I went to a really smoky restaurant for lunch. Can you tell? So are you able to notice, like because of the way I smell? So can you tell is asking for information, like can you see, can you notice? Can't you tell is a confirmation question. So just remember, tell is used to mean understand. I hope that that helps you. Thanks very much for the question. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question comes from Bakhtar Khan. Hi, Bakhtar. Bakhtar says, hi, Alicia. What is the meaning of rather? I really can't use it in a sentence. Okay, there are a couple of different ways to use rather. First, we can use rather to introduce preferences. So a great example of this is, would you rather A or B? So we're introducing our options with the word rather. Then, when we give our preference, we can use rather to do that. We can say, I would rather A than B. So this is giving us options. We can use it to give those options, and we can use it to explain our choice. You can think of rather like prefer, meaning you would desire one thing more than another thing. So I would rather drink coffee than tea. She would rather watch a movie at home than go to a theater. So rather sounds a bit more casual than prefer. The second use of rather then is to use the word to mean a better way of saying something that I just said. I use social media every day. Rather, I check social media every day. I don't always post. So when we use rather in a sentence like this, it means a better or perhaps a more accurate way to say what I just said is this. So in the first sentence, I said, I use social media every day. Then I said rather, which means more accurately or a better way to say that is I check social media every day. So you can hear with my intonation, I'm focusing on the word that I'm changing. In the first sentence, my verb was use. I use social media every day. When I use this rather pattern, I'm emphasizing with my voice the change that I have made. So I check social media every day. That's the thing that's more accurate.
So when we use rather, this is kind of a common emphasis pattern. Let's look at one more example. He hates going on business trips. Rather, he hates the paperwork required for going on business trips. So in that case, we're making the statement a little bit more accurate, and we use rather to explain that. So he doesn't hate business trips, he hates the paperwork he has to do for business trips. So we use rather in this way as well. So those are two ways to use the word rather. I hope that this helped you understand. Thanks very much for the question. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question this week comes from Tan Tishin. Hi, Tan. Tan says, number 1, what's the difference between important, essential, and significant? And 2, what is the meaning of time after time, year after year, or day after day? Okay, let's look at your first question, important, essential, and significant. So important means it requires attention, something that requires our attention. Some examples. We have some important news to share. It's important we have a meeting soon. Essential means important and we cannot do without it. Like if we don't have this thing, something negative might happen. Some examples. Healthcare is essential for all citizens. It's essential we solve these problems as soon as possible. So significant means something very noticeable or to a great degree, to a great extent. Examples. There was a significant increase in profits last year. We lost a significant amount of inventory in the storm. Okay, so that's a quick introduction to the differences between important, essentially, and significant. Now let's go on to your question about year by year or day by day and those kinds of patterns. We just use these to emphasize that over time something happened. So like for example, year by year she improved her English speaking abilities. It means like as years passed, something occurred gradually. So day by day, he grew more and more proficient at playing the trumpet, for example. So it's referring to something that continues over a period of time that's expressed with this day by day or year by year. So if it's an everyday action, you could use day by day to mean like a child growing, for example. Like day by day, the child grew stronger. Or if it's something that's more long-term, like language studies, you could say year by year, her English speaking abilities grew. So we're talking about a continuing action over time, usually that grows or like that changes in some way. So we can use these kinds of expressions to talk about that progress. I hope that that helps you. Okay, thanks very much for the question. Let's move on to your next question. Next question this week comes from Bruno Donizete Bueno. Hi, Bruno. Bruno says, hi, Alicia. Please tell me, what is the difference between I go and I will go? Okay, I go begins a present tense statement. So that's something that happens now, like part of a schedule or just something that you regularly do. Examples. I go shopping every weekend. I go to the dentist once a year. I will go is a future tense statement, a simple future tense statement. When you use will, you're talking about something that's probably in the near future and maybe something you just made a decision about. Examples. I'll go with a latte, please. I think I'll go to the movies after work. So will go is a future tense statement. I go is a present tense statement. Hope that that helps you. Thanks for the question. Okay, let's move on to your next question. Next question for this week comes from Constantine. Hi, Constantine. Constantine says, hi, Alicia. Is there a difference between because and cause? It seems to me they have a similar meaning, yes? Yes, these are the same. So because and cause have the same meaning. Because. We write cause without be at the beginning, just to be more casual, to be a little bit more friendly. So you can use them in the same way. I would recommend if, however, you are writing something like an essay or paper, something formal, make sure to use because. So always spell the full word because. On the other hand, you may also find an even shorter version, or rather a shorter spelling of this word.
C-U-Z, cuz. So cuz also means because. But we just use this cuz because it's quick and easy to type, but it's also just the way that native speakers say because in everyday speech. We don't always say because so clearly. We use cuz, like I'm going to the store cuz I want to get something to eat. So cuz, C-U-Z, is something you might see a lot in texts or on social media as well. So yes, because, cause, and cuz all have the same meaning. Because. Thanks very much for the question. Great work. Here's a reward. Speed up your language learning with our PDF lessons. Get all of our best PDF cheat sheets and ebooks for free. Just click the link in the description.